about partnership. We want to build partnership. We're partnered with OpenVape, one of the largest companies in the United States. Very proud of our partnership with Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. I was in Hong Kong last week. Dr. Abel would have enjoyed it, where we had over 100 individuals and top researchers in addiction that were gathered in an amazing presentation by Mount Sinai as to how cannabis CBD is now being used to treat heroin addiction in the United States. We're also partnered with the National Black Chamber, which is doing a presentation there on this Saturday. So again, we've built a company on partnership. Our vision for Jamaica: create some really, really good medicine. We have the ability, we've got the researchers, we've got the history, and then to be able to export that to the international marketplace. One of the challenges that I've had, and my challenges I've seen in Jamaica, is this association with ganja and medical marijuana. And so we need an educational program. Everyone thinks of, as soon as you mention medical marijuana, the first thing that comes to mind is a spliff. And this is so far from the truth. If you look at some of the companies in Canada right now, there's about 7 companies that are publicly listed. The highest one is about $1.8 billion. The lowest one is about $300 million. These are companies that are publicly listed. You look at GW Pharmaceuticals in the United States, that's a $2 billion company. So the opportunity for Jamaica is utilizing the universities, Wayne McLaughlin, the great research that's being done, getting investments across the board from people from the diaspora and others, and being able to produce amazing products that are helping to build communities. We've just partnered with the Jamaica Bauxite Institute. We've got about 50,000 acres of bauxite land that's now sitting there that represents a spoil for Jamaica. And we're trying to figure out how can we work with communities, invest in these communities, reclaim that land, grow not only potentially medical marijuana, but also different forms of herbs. So I know that there will be questions, but I really hope that you as the diaspora, you come back and you participate in this. Because otherwise, others are going to be jumping on board, and we have to now not make the mistakes that we've made in the past, reclaim our destiny, and I think medical marijuana is the product that can do that for us. Thank you very much.
Wow, Wayne, great. Sorry, Betty. So let me thank the speakers again. They did it. They delivered on time, and I think they were all very clear and succinct in their presentation. But in listening, I can't help but reflecting on the fact that Israel is world leader, Ghana is getting in the business, Canada, full legalization next year. A question I'll pose, is the window of opportunity closing on us? Opportunity is now here, right? And it's time for us to grasp. At this point in time, we're going to open the floor to questions and answer. How much time do we have, Professor Ying, for Q&As? 20 minutes. So we have a lot of time because we've utilized our time very well. So let me start with you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited and hoping to see how we can certainly form partnerships with everybody up there. I have a question. Last year we had, last November when we had our agriculture conference in Washington, we did a session on Capitol Hill on medical marijuana. So this question is about the big issue, which is the finance and the banking chain. What is happening and how can us in the diaspora, working with your counterparts in the US who are trying to get the federal laws to match up with state laws so you can have trans-state border crossing of the financing, how can we help be the voice for that so we don't further exacerbate the FinTrack and the correspondent banking challenges we already have? Option 2, have you looked at blockchain and alternate financing as a way to go around that problem if we had to do it? How can we be helpful in advancing that? And other folks, I will hopefully catch up with you of how we can partner.
In reference to the first part of your question, it's difficult to know. With the current government of the United States, the laxing of those laws with regard to ganja seem very unlikely based on the rhetoric that has been said in the open space. Jamaican banks, their correspondent banks in New York, those banks are their lifeblood. So until I believe the Jamaican banks need to get together and put their heads together in order to figure out, well, what are our options? And then once they figure out their options, their advocacy is going to come with regard to the Bank of Jamaica, and then further on with the Ministry of Finance to the United States Treasury. That's the primary. In reference to alternative ways of providing financing, one can always provide financing in whatever way you see fit. The problem is the banking of the industry at the end of the day. When a man makes $1, rather than putting it under a mattress, he wants to be able to go ahead and put it in a financial institution. So until the local banks actually reach a consensus with regard to how they themselves are going to manage this industry, unfortunately, all we can do is push them to move forward.
Okay, thanks. You may go ahead. Thank you very much.
Doesn't seem, my name is Nancy George, and I'm a Jamaican. I was born in Canada, but I live in Jamaica. I just was interested in knowing, there's lots being said about marijuana, but this was supposed to also include the hemp industry, and I haven't heard anything about hemp and the advancement of hemp and its industrial possibilities.
We are currently in the process of drafting the regulations for hemp. The reason we had to do this in a very systematic approach is because hemp that is planted too close to ganja breeds the possibility of cross-pollination. So what we thought was the best way to do it was to get the ganja industry up and running. We are currently in the process of seeking advice with regard to the hemp industry, with regard to the sex of the plant, etc., whether or not it has to be done specifically indoors, because unfortunately we live in a small island that has hurricanes. So the possibility of cross-pollination is high. So what I can say is that we're hoping in the next year that the hemp regulations will be out.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Well, one of my questions was asked just now.
Okay.
Although I had a different way of framing it, so I will reframe it. What are the waste products? I'm really interested in agricultural waste and how it's dealt with in Jamaica in general, because it represents an opportunity to combat climate change and to produce additional streams of income for the business owners. And the other one is inclusion. How do you keep and include the small? I mean, what you've mainly talked about is how to construct barriers to entry, which is great for Jamaica against the rest of the world. But in terms of barriers to entry for those small people who don't have the funds to, to put in place the security measures, to apply for all the, to jump through the hoops, how is this industry going to trickle down to the small man, the small farmer who might have a half an acre? So those are the two questions. Agricultural waste, I was assuming maybe that could provide secondary industries in hemp or textiles or energy production or other things. I'm not an expert. But
okay, excellent question.
Okay.
I start with the waste product. We're hoping that the industry will have zero waste. So we're looking at all aspects of the plant to be used. The leaves,
medical,
the stems, the
okay.
roots. Then if there is waste, in a sense, that we hope to look at mulching, using that residual to be put back into the field. So we're looking at all aspects.
In reference to the small farmer aspect, when the interim regulations came online, we did a tour around Jamaica in order to speak to the small farmers. And subsequent to that, what we were able to figure out is that under the United Nations Protocol, we are able to do something called an alternative development program. We sought permission from Cabinet. Cabinet had an alternative development program in this circumstance is actually a community-monitored effort. Cabinet has allowed us to have a pilot project with regard to 2 AD programs in the country. We met with most of the representatives of the advocacy groups and small farmer organizations. From them, we came up with a committee that's going to come up with a list of criteria, and ultimately we will be accepting applications to find the 2 best groups that will give us the greatest likelihood of success. The foundation of that AD program is ultimately that a farmer is able to grow a half an acre, enough to go ahead and feed his family, and the product that he grows ultimately goes into the regulated stream. So that is currently being worked upon.
Okay, thanks. Sir? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jay.
Just in response to your question, because I think it is really a critical question for the industry. Our mantra is from sharecroppers to shareholders. And I think it's really critical that we begin to wrap our minds around how these farmers participate in the value-added element of the industry. Because if they don't, they're just going to be sharecroppers. Our partners, for example, in California, Open Vape has an amazing program. And so what they've done is they've worked with individual farmers in California, but they now allow that farmer to have his own brand. So this farmer, his product, his name, etc., is going out. And I think we've got to kind of look at situations in Jamaica. First of all, how do we promote these individual farmers, allow them to develop their own brand, their own products, their own value added, but also critical as these companies begin to come to Jamaica, these farmers need to be shareholders in these companies. Otherwise, we're going to recreate the plantation system.
Sure. Sure, go ahead.
Just thought what Courtney said is extremely important, but just to add on one other thing. One of the things that I'm very cognizant of is that there is a lot of influx coming into Jamaica of people who want to speak to farmers and ultimately take away their traditional knowledge. And I have implored the local farmers to be very careful, because what they have has a value. What they know has a value. With regard to the branding issue, that has to be an industry-driven process. And I put it to all members of the market that with regard to geographical indicators, the setting up of their own brands, etc., I believe that is also going to be critical in order to ensuring the value of whatever somebody is producing. So if you are somebody who is willing to get into the system, I ask that you join with other people into one, trying to see if Jamaica can get a geographical indicator for ganja, and two, to educate those farmers with regard to setting up their own brands.
Thank you. Sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming and spending time with us. Marlon Hill, attorney in Miami. This question is for Cindy. Michael Lichin was here with us this morning, and he was talking about the drivers and inhibitors of economic growth. One of the inhibitors of growth, in my opinion, on many levels across the spectrum of Jamaica and the diaspora, is our culture, as how we look at things, how we view things. And I think the image of ganja is something that is an inhibitor among our people in terms of, hands-off kind of thing. I would like to know from you, Cindy, how much resources will be dedicated from the CLA or any of the ministries that are affiliated with the CLA in regards to a marketing campaign to educate the Jamaican public, because everyone's looking to Jamaica. We already have a brand without even marketing it, because everyone's looking at that our cannabis has some special magical powers. And it may, right? But from an image standpoint, I think our entire culture needs to be recalibrated, as one of the words used this morning, as to how we view cannabis, ganja, weed, cali weed, whatever the words are. So we need a marketing campaign. Where is this going to come from? Can we get the Parliament to dedicate some resources? Because it's not only connected to the Ministry of Commerce, it's connected to the Ministry of Tourism, it's connected to the Ministry of Youth. And because the delivery method, the state where I come from, they still have a stigma as to the delivery method of smoking and split, like Courtney said, right? There's several types of delivery methods, and it's not just smoking. And there's a lawsuit in the state of Florida fighting to get that back, because they approved medical marijuana, and delivery method includes smoking. So could you speak to that, please?
Unfortunately, our marketing budget right now is not that large, and that is primarily because right now we are trying to set up the regulatory system. Until I have a regulatory system that the international community can look at and say that it is foolproof, that has to be my primary focus at the moment. Our marketing and I wouldn't necessarily marketing, I'd say our communications campaign has to do primarily now with the misconception that's happening with regard to ganja in Jamaica. In other words, I think that when the law was initially rolled out, everybody kind of said that weed has been freed up and everybody was happy, and then all of a sudden we had to re-educate people with regard to the separation of what was recreational versus what was medicinal. And so ultimately that is what we have been dealing with at the moment. But I do take your point that in terms of an adequate marketing campaign, we are going to need funds. But unfortunately right now with the list, it's not in the top 5 at the moment.
Okay, thanks very much.
I think, we also have to recognize that Jamaica's brand is actually potentially a problem for us. This association with ganja is our greatest obstacle that we have to deal with. And, when I started in this 4 years ago, I was not fully aware of the medical benefits. And recently, the Minister of Health, he spoke about his views on smoking. I was attending a conference that looked at the development of the human brain for young people under 19 years old. So there are some very serious considerations that we have to balance here in Jamaica. But if we begin to characterize this as a medical industry, following along the path of Dr. Lockhart, Dr. West, and building on those products, that might be one way of starting to change people's perception, where you can actually see real results and products happening in the marketplace.
Okay, thanks. I realize the queue is getting longer. I'm going to close it. And what I'm going to do is just take the questions, we'll note them, and you can sit. It's also polite, so we don't have you standing on your feet for too long, right? So I'm going to zigzag in order. So, sir, you first, and then we come to you, and we end with the gentleman behind you. So you can just note your question quickly, and we'll record it.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shaquille Sayers. I'm from Canada. Well, it's not much of a question, it's more of a statement. I have a vested interest in the cannabis industry. I didn't hear you guys speak about the endocannabinoid system, which it connects to the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system of the brain, which deal with the pain, sensation, and the mood, and all of those type of things, which only cannabis can help those receptors and cure that feeling. I never heard you guys speak about that. I'm just saying that.
Okay, well, thanks very much for pointing that out. I don't know if we have to further comment on it in the interest of time, but we'll note. If we get an opportunity, we'll do that, right? Promise you. But we'll note that if we need to elaborate. Thanks very much. And we realize you're a young man. Thanks for being here. Thanks for participating. Next, please.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Ardrey. I'm a principal at Blue Diamond Capital. We're a real estate development company and investors. And so you touched on medical tourism, which is an area that I'm very interested. So I'm wondering if there's any additional comments about the use of medical marijuana in the medical tourism space.
So your question is about medical tourism. We'll come back to that. Okay. Next person, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Marie Kellier. I am the alternate advisory board member for the Midwest USA. I live in Los Angeles. I'm a producer. I wanted to just touch on the whole idea of education, because actually I took out my computer and started working on catching up on my emails, because I really wasn't that interested in this session. But as I heard the information, I realized that I'm also an educator. I do marketing. And so I realized that there is probably a space within this industry where my skills could fit. But the thing about it, I keep hearing the young lady in the middle, I forgot, I can't see your name from here, but you keep referring to it as ganja, all right? Whereas the other panelists are referring to it as cannabis. And therein, we're not even sure, it seems, what our branding is or what we're actually putting out as our product. It's been noted that there's some issues with the word ganja and the perception in Jamaica. So it seems like we need to kind of have a conversation about that as we roll out this pretty new industry that some of us may not warm up to immediately, but may eventually find a place that we could actually get on board.
All right, thanks for that question. It's about education, possible role for educators, the need to brand our product, and to clarify ganja, cannabis. We'll come back to that. Sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Courtney Lewis here from Tancor Trade Union. What it is, this thing is a big fish, and we have a liquor boat trying to get a big fish in a liquor boat. That's what is happening here. What is it if we don't know what we're doing, we'll just lose all of this thing? One, the geographical area. Two, the structure, financial structure. We don't control capitalism. It controls us at the moment. And we have to find a way how we can know the country, not the geographical area. So we need a trust fund to do the business, not the banking thing, the trust fund. The government needs to set up a trust fund where these people put their fund and the central bank do the transaction thereafter with the international body. That's what we need to do. The next thing and the biggest problem, the small people who carry the brunt of the thing, we're leaving them out. Yes, we need to regulate rules around them. We send that, we draft that thing for, we fix that thing and send it. They should have worked with it, what we have sent. So the small people don't be left out, because if the small people, like who do the trade, it become a culture of them doing it that way. We won't stop this gun for junk trade, and that is the biggest problem. If we don't have peace, we can't have business. And we need to find a way to regulate the thing with them within it, not leaving them out. So these are the biggest problem. We need to sit, I won't take up the whole time. So everybody...
Excellent point, sir. Thanks very much. And it's about trust funds versus banking, role of the central bank, small people leaving them out. We'll come to that point. You, and then you, sir, and then that's it.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Abel.
Sure.
Michael Barnett here. As somebody who is familiar with the situation in South Florida and here in Jamaica, I just want to make the contrast that we in Jamaica need to follow the trends that is happening, the dispensaries that are now set up in South Florida. And also we need to include Rastafari, I think, more in the industry here. I would like to know how many Rastafari are on the CLA board, for instance, because Rastafari, without anyone saying it, are responsible for the branding, I would argue, the strong branding that we have in Jamaica. But there seems to be the de-Rasticization of the marijuana industry here. No one wants to speak to it, but I will speak to it. And but it's Rastafari, ironically, who is branding the marijuana here. So I would like to see them incorporated in this discussion. And I'm wondering just how much influence does Rastafari have with the CLA and the granting of licenses, because ironically in South Florida I can speak highly of Dr. Hall, who is a medical Rastafari doctor, has a dispensary and so forth. Rastafari brethren here are struggling to emulate the same thing here in Jamaica. It should be easier here than in South Florida. So I'd like the panel to speak to that.
Thanks for raising those great points. And it's about dispensing, ensuring that we include the Rastafarians and how many of them are in the CLA. The point is, not left out the rest of them, right? We have to make sure we safeguard about. So we'll come back to that. And yours, sir, the last question, and then we will address all of them.
My name is Lyle Young. I teach in Minneapolis, Minnesota for the last 26 years. I've been in teaching for 40 years. I'm from Granger, Westmoreland originally, where the great Peter Tosh came from, where he was born. He sang the first song about legalizing marijuana in Jamaica. Let's give him some kudos. Now, my point is, question I should say, are why can't we start a cooperative system to help the small farmers get together and organize themselves? They'll be stronger together. I close by saying there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent questions and point. Thanks a lot. So we will now try to answer these questions. The first one is about medical tourism.
The Act gives, well, the regulations permit as I indicated before, a tourist to come in and get a permit, as well as to go ahead and partake in the industry. So the opportunities there, in addition to having your own herb house, is obviously the situation of ecotourism, as well as the issue of medical tourism with regard to treatment. So that's the short answer for that one. If I could just address some other issues
absolutely.
quickly. In reference to ganja, that lady was absolutely correct. The reason I actually use that interchangeably is that if you travel around Jamaica and speak to the farmers, they are very clear. They grow ganja. So that is the reason why sometimes, in particular with the CLA, that word is actually used interchangeably. In reference to the gentleman with the Rastafari, two actually Rastafarians sit on our board. One is from the Ethiopia diaspora. The second one is Ras Ayavi, who's the head of the Westmoreland Ganja Growers Association. So their participation and their commentary is integral to the way in which we operate. Just to add a little bit more about the Rastafari, though, I think it needs to be separated into two issues. There's one which is the commercialization of ganja that is grown by Rastafari, and then there is the issue of sacramental. The CLA does not have a remit for sacramental. That is governed by the Ministry of Justice. So for example, if people are having permits for events, etc., all of that goes to the Ministry of Justice. The gentleman who asked about the cooperative system. Yes, you can apply as a cooperative. The regulations do provide for that. The one restriction with regard to cooperative is that the lands have to be contiguous, which means that they all have to be joined together. You can't have 50 parcels of land all over the country. So we do have people who have applied in a cooperative nature, and that has actually been very economical for them because it is one application form that actually has to come in. Yeah.
The banking issue, trust funds versus banking.
Well, for the trust fund issue, that's an issue for the ministry. What you're saying is that the government should ultimately set up a trust fund. I don't necessarily know, with all of the financial considerations the government has at this moment, whether or not it is able to do so. With regard to the suggestion that was posed, with regard to kind of, I believe, have almost a facility that did, a central facility that did the banking. The problem is that even all financial institutions in Jamaica are ultimately governed by the Bank of Jamaica. So even a credit union banks with a commercial bank who ultimately is governed by the Bank of Jamaica. So therein lies the problem, which is why I say that the banks have to get together to go ahead and solve the problem. I believe that for them, there is a lot of opportunity for them to earn in this industry. And so I do believe that if you want to say, the carrot is in front of them in order to find a workable answer as to how to bank the industry.
Thanks very much. Before you go, Professor Ying wants to make some important announcement, and I have one to remind us that the Faculty of Medical Sciences, UWI, annual research conference is in November this year, 2017, and we'll be looking at cannabis and cannabinoids, opportunities and challenges. Thanks very much for your participation. Thank the panelists. Have a wonderful afternoon. Professor Ying.
Give the panelists a round of... It's not very easy to bring the day to a closure, but I think we had an excellent panel, very informative, very engaging. Give them another round of applause. And let's thank Professor Abel. He was very able in handling the session. Thank you, panelists. Just some announcements. I would like to meet the following persons right after this session. Danica Jones, Yvette Blackburn, Nathaniel Pete, Alison Smith, Corey Hyde, Gillian Wilkins-Mack, and Beverly Johnson. Can't escape Beverly. Just a reminder, the Grace Kennedy Victoria Mutual Oldies Lime will be at the Sunken Gardens at Hope Gardens. The bus leaves the Pegasus at 7 p.m. It leaves the Courtly, the people at the Courtly can just walk across to the Pegasus. And those at Knutsford Court, it's 7:15. Rupert, you have an announcement? What's that? Invitation to day of service. That's on Thursday. So we can make this announcement again tomorrow, Rupert. Well, thanks all, and have a good evening. Go out and enjoy yourselves. Be back here at 8:30 in the morning for the creative and cultural industries to kick off the day. Now the real discussion starts. Marlon, you two are going to argue.
Thank you very much. No. Yes. There you go.
Professor Neville Ying.
Stock
wrapping up
exchange,
day 2.
persons going over there at midday tomorrow. Please remember to connect with us at midday tomorrow.
Of the Jamaica 55 Diaspora Conference. And that session you just heard was Positive Vibrations, a discussion on Jamaica's fledgling medical marijuana industry. And that's how we closed out day 2. I have here with me Seymour Mattis, one of the delegates at this year's conference, and he is a member of the Jamaica Education Task Force in the United Kingdom. Welcome, Mr. Mattis.
Thank you very much.
All right, please tell me a little bit more about the work of the Jamaica Education Task Force in the UK.
Well, Jamaica Education Task Force was set up in 2013 out of the recommendation of the 2013 biennial conference. And we actually set up to provide our leverage support for education in Jamaica, holistic education. So we're talking about basic schools, primary school, and high schools, and beyond.
And in those 4 years, tell me what are some of your notable accomplishments?
Well, basically the first one was to do with Padmore Primary School, where the school was down for closure by the Ministry of Education, and we actually renovated the school to make it safe for the pupils to return to school that particular year. And we've supported them ever since.
The principal of Padmore Primary was here yesterday and spoke about the work that you have been doing in terms of supporting them. What are the plans for the rest of Jamaica's education sector in the near future?
Well, we can start immediately with the Diaspora Day of Service at the Michael College University on the 27th of July,
right,
where we're launching our Creative Futures Jamaica project, or program, if you like. It's much bigger than a project. And this will be it's aimed at actually providing information as well as strategy for teachers to deliver STEM and, if you like, business to their students within their schools. And we start in grade 5. So it goes from grade 5 to high school, sixth form.
All right, so we're streaming live on the internet. For those Jamaicans in the United Kingdom who are watching, tell us how they could get involved in the Jamaica Education Task Force.
Well, we're actually working with particular high schools at the moment, starting with them. And the first two we're starting with is with Newell High School and Black River High School in St. Elizabeth. But we aim to actually roll it out to other schools as well. And how the program works is that the primary schools who have grade 5 and 6 students